video we are going to discuss about the displacement reactions. So what do you mean by displacement reactions? So last year you might have done one particular activity. Do you remember that particular activity? You might have taken copper sulfate solution. So what is the color of copper sulfate solution? Some of you may know. What is the color of copper sulfate solution? The color of copper sulfate solution is, yes, blue in color. So when you place an iron nail, which is of somewhat silvery gray color, so after a long time, so what will you observe? Ah, the blue color solution, the blue color copper sulfate solution now slowly changes into somewhat light green color. At the same time, when you take the iron nail and see what happens, the grayish color of the iron nail or the white color of the silvery color of the iron nail has now changed into somewhat brown color. That is due to the deposition of copper over its surface. So this activity you might have seen. So this activity, what is happening? Ah, a highly reactive metal displaces a less reactive metal from its salt solution, and so as to form its own salt, and displaces the less reactive metal from its aqueous salt solution. So in today's video we are going to discuss about displacement reactions. So I have written a lot of chemical equations here, so don't need to bother about this. We will study, we'll look at these particular reactions one by one. So first of all, we were in the previous video we were discussing about chemical properties of metals and non-metals. So in the chemical properties of metals and non-metals, we already discussed about the metals, the reaction of metals with oxygen, and the reaction of metals with water, then the reaction of metals with acids, and the reaction of metals with bases. Yes. So in today's video we are going to discuss about how these metals react with other metal salt solutions. Say copper sulfate. If you take an example, copper sulfate, you might have seen copper sulfate crystals in our lab. See copper sulfate crystals. What is the color of copper sulfate crystals? Blue color. See, when you make a blue color, when you take some amount of blue color copper sulfate and see, take a 100 ml beaker and put 50 ml water in it, and you add a small gram, say 10 gram of copper sulfate, blue color copper sulfate into this beaker. So let us see what color the solution will form. The solution will also get blue color. See, now let us look at the first chemical reaction or the displacement reaction. So, displacement reaction you can define in such a way, when a more reactive metal displaces another less reactive metal from its compound in aqueous solution, and we put it in 50 ml of water and we made a solution, copper sulfate solution. So this type of solution that are made in water, the metal salt copper sulfate, which is blue in color, and we took say 10 or 20 gram of copper sulfate and we put it in water. So that is, so when you mix this, what will happen? You will get a copper sulfate solution. So copper sulfate solution, why I have written here aqueous, that means we have dissolved this copper sulfate salt in water. So that's why I will have written here aqueous solution. So the solutions of any substance which is in water, that is known as aqueous solution. So remember that when you place iron nail in blue color copper sulfate solution, what happens after some time? So it will take some time, say after 1 hour, say after 2 hours, what will happen slowly? The color of the solution, here the observation is basic, that the color, the blue color of the copper sulfate solution slowly changes into green color. See, as a result, that means what? Something is happening there. Okay, so here iron nail, we can also observe that the iron nail slowly changes its color. Earlier it was white in color, so slowly it changes its color to brown. A brownish deposit of copper that will be formed over the iron nail. So in this reaction we can observe two things. One is the color of copper sulfate solution is getting changed to green color due to the formation of ferrous sulfate. And at the same time the color of the iron nail, which was white, somewhat silvery white, that changes to brown. Here I have written copper because that copper will get deposited onto this iron nail. See, here you can see copper metal, here you can see iron, metal iron. See, the reaction is happening, displacement is happening between iron and copper. Here, iron is more reactive. Iron is the more reactive metal. So what will happen? When you place iron nail in copper sulfate solution, iron is more reactive than copper. So what will happen? This will give a kick to this copper and sit here. And as a result, if you remove copper and iron takes the place, what will happen? It will form FeSO4. A new bond is formed. That is FeSO4, new substance, new compound, FeSO4, and its color is green. And what happens? The displaced copper will get deposited over iron. So this is what happened during a displacement reaction. So that's why this reaction is known as displacement. So something which was already here, copper was here associated with sulfate radicals, that has been displaced by iron. Iron nail, which is more reactive than copper, so iron metal which is more reactive than copper, takes the position of copper and so as to form iron sulfate solution and displaces copper. See, similarly you can see another equation, or only iron nail can displace copper from copper sulfate solution? No. Zinc, take example, another metal, zinc. Let us take the example of another metal, zinc, and instead of iron nail we are placing the zinc metal into copper sulfate solution. So after some time what will you observe? After some time the blue color, already we know that the color of copper sulfate solution is blue. So the blue color of the solution will now turn to zinc sulfate. As a result of the formation of zinc sulfate, the color will now be colorless. It becomes colorless. The solution becomes colorless and copper will get displaced. And the displaced copper will be coated over zinc. Earlier the zinc was somewhat light or silver grayish color. So now the color of zinc will somewhat changes to brownish color. So this is what happening in this particular reaction. That means what? Both iron and zinc can displace copper from its aqueous solution. So metal salt solution. So let us consider, so what may happen between, suppose if iron and zinc, out of these two, iron and zinc, what will be more reactive? Which one will be more reactive? You may be eager to know about this. We will find out. See, now let us take the third beaker, and we are taking in that ferrous sulfate solution. So ferrous sulfate solution, already we have seen here, ferrous sulfate solution, which is what, green in color, already written here, green color, and copper metal, brownish color, copper metal. So we are taking ferrous sulfate crystals and putting copper metal in the solution, and we are keeping it for a long time. So after some time what will happen? After a very long time, you will notice there is not change, not even to the copper nail or copper metal, or neither the color of the solution. Also there exists no change. So what we can infer from that? If nothing is happening, what, there is no reaction. Clear? And let us discuss one more, zinc sulfate. Another solution, zinc sulfate. Almost all the metals form salt solutions. Zinc sulfate, if you take zinc sulfate and mix it with water, so that you can get aqueous solution also, which I have written AQ. So this means aqueous solution. This zinc sulfate, which is a salt, colorless salt. Zinc sulfate, if you take some amount of zinc salt, just like your common salt, and dissolve it in 50 ml of water, you will get zinc sulfate solution. And the zinc sulfate solution, and if you keep iron nail in zinc sulfate solution, what will you observe? There is no color change. That means what? Iron nail cannot displace zinc from zinc sulfate solution. So which means what? Zinc is more reactive than iron and copper. We are already seeing that when you place zinc sulfate, if you take zinc sulfate solution and if you place copper in it instead of iron, if you place copper in zinc sulfate solution, there is also no reaction. There also no reaction. So which means what? Metal. Zinc metal is more strong or more reactive than iron. So as a result, iron nail cannot displace zinc from zinc sulfate solution. So that's why here exists there no reaction. So there you will not see any color change, or neither the color of the solution gets changed, or nor the solution, color of the metal, or not deposition of metals will be found in these three situations. So the reason is that the first one we have taken iron sulfate solution. Iron sulfate. Let's just look at these three cases once more. So in the first two cases, the displacement reaction has been happened, and here we can see copper sulfate solution we have taken. Since the copper metal is less reactive than iron, so iron sulfate and copper has been formed, or copper is being displaced by iron, and so as to form its own salt. What? Copper cannot displace iron. So copper is weak or less reactive. So similarly, zinc and iron. In the case of zinc and iron is less reactive than zinc. So iron cannot displace zinc from its aqueous salt solution. So some certain metals are more reactive and certain metals are less reactive. Sodium scale. In the case of sodium, if we expose sodium even to the atmosphere, what will happen? It will catch fire. And similarly, you can see if magnesium or iron nail, if it is exposed to moisture, it will take long time so as to react and form rust. So metals differ in their reactivity. So exactly what is the position of these metals, we can find out by performing displacement reactions. So different metals, if you place different metals in different salt solutions, so if the metal is more reactive than the aqueous solution, aqueous salt solution of that particular metal, displacement reactions will happen. And in the remaining cases, there will not be any displacement reaction. So I hope you understood this particular part. If you have got any doubt, you can ask me. If you